Hey Collide, welcome to the final week of our series about trusting God with all of the things that He's given to us. So far in this series, we've talked about what it looks like for us to trust God with our gifts, our story, and our lives. So to finish up our series, today we're going to talk about what it looks like for us to trust God with our influence. And you might be sitting there going, wait a minute, Ben, time out. I'm like 10 years old. I don't have influence. That's all lies. In order to have this conversation, we have to be on the same page with this. And the truth is, we all have influence. Don't believe me? I have an example for you. I have a 5-year-old named Judah, and he's awesome. He's been really into Pokemon lately, and that's all he wants to do. He wants to play Pokemon, he wants to watch Pokemon, and when we ask him what he might want for his birthday, most of the things that he says are pretty much Pokemon related. A few weeks ago, we were hanging out with some of our family, and Judah was playing with his cousin and talking about how we walk around our town playing Pokemon Go. And so then they started playing Pokemon, and I didn't really think much of it until later that evening, my brother texted me asking me a question about Pokemon Go. And so now he and my niece play Pokemon Go because Judah had used his influence to teach them about Pokemon. Judah made that happen. He might not have known it, but he influenced his cousin and also my brother. Influence doesn't have an age requirement. Influence doesn't require a certain level of education. It doesn't require any training. We all have it. But using our influence positively does take training. And that's what we're talking about today. So to do this, I want to talk about a story from a book in the Bible called Exodus. In Exodus, we're introduced to a man named Moses. Now, Moses has this incredible life where he leads his people to freedom and does all kinds of amazing things. And it's a great story to check out, so make sure you read it at some point. But in Exodus chapter 3, what we find is a story of Moses and the burning bush. You might have even heard of this story before. Moses was out in his fields tending his flock of sheep, and a bush goes up in flames. But what was odd about it is it wasn't burning up. Instead, the bush started talking to Moses. Well, it wasn't really the bush that was talking, it was God. And God spoke to Moses through this burning bush and told him the plans that God had for Moses. See, God tells Moses that he wants to use Moses to free his people from slavery by using his influence. God tells Moses that he needs to appear before Pharaoh, who's the king of all of Egypt, and free God's people. But Moses isn't convinced. You see, something you should know about Moses is that Moses wasn't much of a public speaker. It kind of freaked him out. And I know some of us are that way. I've been that way lots of times. And so the whole idea is Moses has to go and stand in front of Pharaoh, this guy who's in charge of all of Egypt, and explain to him why he has to let all of this free labor walk out the door. Can you imagine having to do that? It has to have been incredibly terrifying for Moses. And Moses kind of pushes back on God because Moses didn't think he could do it because he didn't think he had that much influence. And then at one point, God and Moses have this conversation. It's actually found in Exodus chapter 4, verses 10 to 12. It says this, "But Moses pleaded with the Lord, 'O Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never have been, and I'm not now. Even though you have spoken to me, I get tongue-tied. My words get tangled.' Then the Lord asks Moses, 'Who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will be with you as you speak and instruct you in what to say.'" And so what God is saying to Moses here is, trust me. Trust me with the influence that you have and that I'm giving to you. Because in the end, we can trust God with our influence. Because ultimately, all the influence we've been given has been given to us by God, and he is with us in that influence. God goes on to send Aaron with Moses on his mission. And Aaron was great with words and helped expand Moses' influence. And at the end of the story, God uses Moses and also his brother Aaron to free the people of Israel. And just like God said, he was with them the entire time. God was with them so much that he parted a massive sea to clear a path for them to escape the Egyptians. And the story of Moses shows us over and over again that we can trust God with our influence. And not because we are these amazingly awesome humans who have superpowers and do everything perfect, but because when we trust our amazing God with our influence, he makes amazing things happen. So Collide family, we all have influence, and our world is desperate for you to use your influence in a positive way. You all have the power to change the world. So let's use that power to change the world to look more like Jesus. God has given you gifts. God's given you a story. God's given you a life. And God has given you influence and so much more. And it's our job to use the things he's given to us to honor him. Guys, it's been great being with you this week. We'll catch you next time.